Okay, so let's just get right into it. You've probably heard the advice a million times, right? Just pick one thing and stick with it. But what if that's not your problem at all? What if your problem is that you have way too many things you want to stick with? You see a dozen different paths, and honestly, they all feel like they could be your path. It's not the work you're afraid of, you're just paralyzed by the choice. So today, we're going to tear down that anxiety and give you a whole new map. A map for those of us who were never, ever meant to be just one thing.
First things first, we've got to talk about the ghost in the room. You know the one. It's that nagging voice that haunts every person with a ton of passions. This whole myth about being a master of none. It's this deep-seated fear that our greatest strength, our curiosity, is secretly a career-ending weakness. Does this sound familiar? I mean, oof. This one quote just perfectly nails that feeling of being frozen. You're standing in front of this huge buffet of amazing possibilities, but you just can't pick up a plate. It's a classic dilemma for people with curious minds. So let's just ask the question, point blank. In a world that screams at you to specialize, is having all this wide-ranging curiosity a bug, or is it a feature? I mean, it can really feel like a liability, can it? Especially when it seems like society has already made up its mind about you. And there it is, the label they slap on you, dilettante, or the classic, jack of all trades, master of none. And that label, it carries so much weight. It suggests you're not focused, you're not deep, you're not serious. It's a criticism that can make you feel like you are fundamentally doing it all wrong. But are you? Or is the world you're trying to squeeze into the actual problem?
So what if the problem isn't you at all? What if it's the system? You see, for the better part of the last century, our entire career model was built for a very, very specific type of person. And that person probably wasn't you. And here they are, the hero of the 20th century, the I-shaped person. This is the specialist. Think a mile deep and an inch wide. They have one single profound pillar of expertise. And for a really long time, this was the undisputed gold standard path to success. Because, they thrived in a world that was predictable and rewarded that kind of intense, narrow focus. Okay, now this slide is where things get really fascinating. Psychologists call that old, predictable world a kind environment. Think about a golfer. The rules are totally fixed. You practice, you get better. The feedback is instant. You hit the ball, you see where it goes. But that's not the world most of us live in anymore. Today, we're in a wicked environment. Think of a firefighter. The rules are constantly changing. Every single situation is brand new. And being a super specialist in just one thing, well, it might not be enough to save you.
And let's be super clear here. We absolutely need specialists. We need their deep knowledge. It's crucial. So the point isn't that the I-shaped path is wrong. The problem, the real problem, is when it's treated as the only path, the only way to be successful. Because when that single standard is used to measure everyone, it makes people whose brains are built for a totally different world feel like they're failing. So if the I shape isn't you, then what's the alternative? Well, this brings us to a much more powerful, much more flexible model for today's world. Let's talk about the polymath advantage. This is all about turning what you thought was your biggest weakness into your greatest asset. Look at this comparison. It's brilliant. On the left, you've got that I-shaped specialist we talked about. But on the right, that's the M-shaped professional, the polymath. See the difference? Instead of one deep pillar, the polymath builds several. They still go deep, but they do it in more than one area. And the real magic? It happens in that horizontal bar at the top. That's the ability to connect all the ideas across those different fields.
So let's be really precise here. A polymath is not a dabbler. This isn't someone who's an inch deep and a mile wide. No way. A polymath is someone who strategically builds multiple deep pillars of knowledge. And then, this is the key, they create unique, incredible value where those pillars intersect. Okay, so this ability to create value by connecting different fields, it comes from a very specific mental skill. It's kind of the polymath's secret weapon. You could even call it their true superpower in this complex world. And that superpower is called far transfer. So a specialist uses what's called near transfer, applying a skill to a really similar problem. But a polymath, they use far transfer. They can see the hidden pattern, the underlying structure in one area and apply it to a totally unrelated one. Think of a musician who sees harmony in computer code, or a botanist who understands the branching root system of a tree and uses that idea to structure a company's database. This is where real game-changing innovation comes from. All right, so this all sounds amazing in theory, right? But how do you actually do it?
How do you go from feeling scattered and anxious to strategically building out your own M shape? Let's break down the practical, actionable steps. It really boils down to 3 core strategies. First, you've got to commit to something called serial mastery. Second, you use a job for stability. And third, you build an external system to capture all your ideas. Let's dig into each one.
Okay, first up, serial mastery. Look, you can't build all your pillars at once. That's just a recipe for feeling spread thin all over again. The key is to pick one pillar and commit to it for a season, like 6 to 18 months. The stakes are way lower this way. You are not choosing for life, you are just choosing for now. Dive in deep until you feel fluent, until you've got that core 80% down, and then you make a conscious choice to move on. This isn't dabbling, this is strategic quitting. It's a graduation, not a failure.
The second strategy, it sounds a little counterintuitive, but stick with me. Embrace a stability job. I'm serious. Think about Einstein working as a patent clerk. A job that pays the bills without sucking up all your mental energy can be a massive strategic asset. It's not a cage trapping you. It's the stable ground that gives your mind the freedom and the energy it needs to wander, to explore, and to build your other pillars on the side.
And finally, build an external system. You have to get this. Your brain is an idea factory, not a warehouse. Trying to store every single thought and idea in your head just leads to total overwhelm. You need a system, it could be an app like Notion, or even just a simple notebook, to capture all those fleeting interests. I mean, there's the sociologist, Nicholas Luhmann, who wrote over 70 books just using a simple index card system. He captured the dots as they appeared so he could connect them years later. So let's put it all together. Once you have this new map for your mind, that self-blame, that anxiety, it starts to fade. And what replaces it is this quiet confidence, a confidence that your unique way of thinking was never a flaw. It was a design.
This is the ultimate reframe. Your brain isn't broken because it can't settle down on just one thing. It's built differently. It's designed to be a bridge, a connection between different worlds of knowledge. You weren't meant to be the master of one thing. You were meant to be the master of seeing the connections between all the things. And that's the real power you have. All those seemingly random interests you've picked up over the years, that's your unique library of metaphors, your personal palette of ideas. So the only question left is the most exciting one of all. What dots are you going to connect?